One, two. Encena con la sol. Three. E miada, e la coria masela, già non sora patompa, e se tomo sid, e sakura pramachana sen. Dice la secchio shabatira sono pana, se la corona sen, pum alla soccora. Setta sala pongiorica sere. E tu a bagnetto le sada, e pat a con nato a tinda in cara fecciata. Cara sera boring mar. E la storia sua maiata se cosucchia fra pu. E sa cara son nunu. E saria poranya nu, kamata namu. E sama nomo. Kala sela nu sela suko from panchinyata na se nu there's a mu. Gadatsina se nu. E conosone e da dama se kina sa tosho kamata na se nu. E da signor mu. E ni se mu se kana sera se metana. E se no mu se kana se metana sa. Cause mu su kamata na soto me. Pitana mu. Kala se flamanche nesse. Da su nu e vicinada. Ma ti messo la mu. E se mera socora ma sola. So. Nomo. Nomo se flamanche nesse. Nomo se mette alla se masho. And then you take the seed. Cosa mera nomo. E sa se. E na soca nesse. E me hinge da. Io coroma seed somewhere. I take that seed. And say no coromadi. You love the seed. No more. Alla pura me set alla. I don't call my semitone no man doesn't matter with the seed. It's a good much sort of you can make it what you need it to be. Alla sola me tama. Soma. No Elfonia penesinta ase arashe enesera che me yare tutti madura pam esse nu che me tiare ciò che basta pana sera lo fare se mezzo e si tamma enesera se com e nessina se corre, e ya chiamato a menzionare, e ne sore panto sole sile, a chiamare la sogna mantan, e c'enziala, a chiara sola panze, a chiara sola panze, chiara fronte, sola ponna, gamma se la scinta, you see? No, you gotta look. It's all chiara step anna. E mettila se ti caras. E nesse malacolos. A cara florente. It's a little sentence. Because it's all in your massa. Every single time you gotta yes and it on your hand. And you gotta slow. And you gotta slow. And it's it. Come on, Ken. Yes. Mut anamaya da ses. I gotta pull up a tina. Echenya story Echenya story you know. No sempre chante, che train, corosuk o matant. It's only now, like new. From new, we go moo. From moo, new, moo, no more. Galas emechala se la te siglo, casa no more. It's like the new and the moo. It's a branchet, and you're in a coromachan, and Soria, and yes, don't forget to speak to the sea. I got seen that all my time. I got seen that all my time. Oh, yes, I don't know. Oh, yes, all my time. Said that Tata Wakinte. Erection, Sura Pants. Erection, and the look, and yes. Ancora per cintare. Era scuma, senta. Cosa macen? Cosa dana macenten? Kore si becho yensin? Alia sonia pansonia? Oh shit! Oh! I can fly! Oh no, my secret on the roots. The root is not bind to your set on your ball. I can fly. Because the leaves say so. Because the green says so. Because its breath says so. Limitless. And your mashallah new. You gotta know the new. So you can know the no. There is nothing, no thing, just new. Repetition thereof. The cosmic seat, it's all new. All new. Not all, like yes or no. And chap, I said it's all new. Ra. Repetition of new. Completion of new. Okay. Multiplication of new. Machine, I gotta say, the matana. LSA. Sienna, doesn't matter whether it's the tree. Sienna, Sienna, doesn't matter whether it's this. Then I said, oh, the root, it's no higher than the root. Check out our phone and keep out the soul, but I'm agenda send. The roots, it's no higher than the roots. And I'm not in the sea. Come and say, I'm put in the sea. And I said, come and see. Tell I said that the root is no higher than the root. What's there in the beginning shall always be there in the end. Even if it changes faces. Loses its stuff, it will always hear it.
Sirius JuJu, everybody! Very excited to throw us over here to London, where Diann is joining us from. Diann Bauer is an artist whose practice functions both independently and collaboratively. Her work deploys a language of visual force across disciplines, including drawing, sculpture, painting, writing, printmaking, installation, architecture, and video, and has been screened and exhibited internationally in institutions, art galleries, as well as non-traditional spaces and contexts. She is a member of Laboria Cuboniks, a collaborative writing project redefining what feminism adequate to a global 21st century, with whom she will soon publish a book which will provide elaborations and divergent forks of the recent online publication of Xenofeminism, A Politics for Alienation. Diann Bauer's practice proposes art not as a catastrophe, instrumentalized by capital for capital's own ends, but as its counterpoint, anastrophe, the burst of the diversification of life, the post-catastrophic event, art as the new mutants produced from the destructive force of capital. Please give a warm welcome to Diann Bauer. I'll be right off to the side to play the video when you're ready.
Okay. All right, super. Okay, this is very weird because what I'm seeing is actually myself, and it's a little bit unnerving, but I'm just gonna try not to look. That's better. Yeah. All right. When first contacted us, it was the whole collective. But we're in sort of the midst of like when we first conceived of the Xenofeminist project, which is really what I'm going to speak about tonight, rather than my own practice particularly. I'll touch on that a little bit, but we conceived of it as we conceived of this character, Laboria Cuboniks, as a not anonymous, a pseudonym for all of us. And it's a question of whether we stay anonymous or like how we do it. And at the moment, it's basically confused because it's not anonymous anymore. And to be honest, it never really was, because when people ask us to do things, there we are. And had we sorted out something like a Real Girls or something like that, or we want masks or something, just set digital versions of ourselves, that would have been one thing. So this is essentially why it's sort of come to a point now where like I feel more comfortable presenting as myself. In part also because there is divergence within the group about various details. There are things that each of us agree with and don't agree with. And actually, I think that's one of the strengths of working together, because we sort of balance each other out and we all come together. And I think produce something that we couldn't produce on our own. So the text, the Xenofeminist Manifesto, was written collectively, written collaboratively. But the version that I'm sort of presenting to you is I suppose, my take. I'm going to show a video that I made, which sort of explicitly says this in a few minutes. I think the best, I don't know how many of you are actually familiar with the text or have read it. I'll read three bits from it to sort of give you some idea. So for those of you who haven't read it, you get a flavor of it, and for those of you that had, it's only 3 bits, so I won't bore you by going on great about it. So it starts. Ours is a world in vertigo. It is a world that swarms with technological mediation, interlacing our daily lives with our spirituality and complexity. Xenofeminism adapted to these realities, a feminism of unprecedented cunning, scale, and vision, a future in which the realization of gender justice and feminist emancipation contribute to a universalist politics assembled from the needs of every human, cutting across race, ability, economic standing, and geographical position. No more futureless repetition on the treadmill of capital. No more subsumption, the drudgery of labor, productive and reproductive alike. No more reification of the given masses critique. Our future requires depetrification. XF is not a bid for revolution, but a wager on the long game of history, demanding imagination, dexterity, and persistence. XF seizes alienation as an impetus to generate new worlds. We are all alienated, but have we never been otherwise? It is through and not despite our alienated condition that we can free ourselves from immediacy. Freedom is not a given, and it's certainly not given by anything natural. The construction of freedom involves not less, but more alienation. Alienation is the labor of freedom's construction. Nothing should be accepted as fixed, permanent, or given, neither material conditions nor social norms. Except mutates, navigates, and probes every horizon. Anyone who's been deemed unnatural in the face of reigning biological norms, or anyone who's experienced injustices brought in the name of the natural order, will realize that the glorification of nature has nothing to offer us. The queer and trans among us, the differently able, as well as those who have suffered discrimination due to pregnancy or duties connected with childbearing, XF is vehemently anti-naturalist. Essentialist naturalism reeks of theology, and the sooner it is exercised, the better. Xenofeminism is irrationalism. To claim that reason or rationality is by nature patriarchal enterprise is to concede defeat. It is true that the canonical history of thought is dominated by men, and in his male hands we see throttling existing institutions of science and technology. This is precisely why feminism must be rational. Because of this visible imbalance, not despite it. So there is no feminine rationality, nor is there a masculine. Science is not an expression, but a suspension of gender. If today it is dominated by masculine egos, then it is at odds with itself. And this contradiction can be leveraged. Reason, like information, wants to be free. And patriarchy cannot give it freedom. Rationalism must itself be a feminism. XF marks the point in these claims intersect in a two-way dependency. It names reason as an engine of feminist emancipation and declares the right of everyone to speak as no one in particular.
Okay, thank you.
So that's just three very short bits from the manifesto, which is much longer, but it sort of gives you a flavor of the tone and the general direction of the project. I think I'll just say briefly sort of how we came together. We met in Berlin. There was a 2-week summer school, which was truly more of a conference around ideas around neo-rationalism, and that we were all there because of our interest and investment in this, and admittedly privilege that allowed us to get to Berlin from the various parts of the world that we're from. So we've got, I'm currently in London. At the time I was in New York, and there's somebody that lives in Canada, Australia, Berlin, and then we have one sort of nomad that sort of floats about. And so we were all at this conference, and we sort of realized that a lot of this accelerationist discourse and rationalist discourse was getting a really hard time for being like a white dude thing. And we were kind of like, well, you know, we're all here, and we're all very invested, and we're all very interested. We're all working in this, with this material. So, you know, what is that about? And, you know, do we need to articulate a feminism? In some ways, as a corrective to this, recognizing that if you're going to make claims about universalism, that obviously it has to be in some ways, I think. So we worked together online basically to create this text over the course of 8 months or so, and it came out about a little over a year ago now.
Can I bother you? I'm so sorry. You lost a sentence to lag. And wait, real quick, let me. Can you? We lost you for lag for like a sentence. It was I remember the word that corrupted was universal. the word that Google corrupted was.
It's universal then something.
Yeah. It's what was it?
We'll leave it. If anything essential was missed, we can come back to the questions. I think I'm kind of at the point now where I'd like to show the video anyway.
I want me to play it?
So can you run that from there? Because I think the live will be really too much if I try to do a screen share.
Yeah, I got it up.
So if you can do that and then just
Can you see it? Yeah.
okay, super. Yeah, great.
believe those messages are your end. I don't see them over here.
Okay. Oh no, what those pings? I think that was actually
Oh, that was me texting you.
you were back and forth. It's all right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, how much time have I got?
Yeah, I mean, like, well, I would say 3 or 4. 3, 4, or 5 minutes.
Okay.
I think would be great.
So, basically, there are 6 of us in that sort of wrote the manifesto together. We've got one person that does sort of is a mathematician and does programming. 2 artists, one who also does a lot of design work, one musician / archaeologist, one woman that, there's actually only one of us that's really sort of well versed in sort of feminist, the history of feminism, a more academic, and then one that does sort of experimental literature. So it's somewhat diverse, but I think what we would like is it to become much more diverse, because I think we recognize that for anything to take hold, it needs to be spread across many disciplines. Just to say a little bit about, I mean, I am one of the artists, to say a little bit about my own interest and work. I mean, I've spent a lot of years trying to think about art and culture and how it relates to politics in a meaningful way, and doesn't just end up serving power, which is, I think, often what happens within the arts field. And also the idea of reclaiming the future for the left. And I guess what is more broadly understood now as a left accelerationist project, and trying to think about what the visual and what art and culture can contribute to this. And actually, on a more sort of personal level, my own research lately has been into the idea of time, being in phenomenology. So I was interested particularly to hear Rasheedah's presentation, because I think we might have some, I would love to actually have a longer conversation with her, because I think we might have some crossover that would be interesting. But I'm particularly looking at trying to look at time in relation to physics via a physicist called Lee Smolin, who is making the argument that time, contrary to much of 20th century physics, is real, and there are no timeless laws of physics. That in fact, the laws of physics themselves change in time. And I'm interested in comparing that with how we experience time. So not necessarily the fact that everything is moving faster and demands on us are more and more that sort of version, but more the question is like, if we have the phenomenological experience of temporality we do because of its proximity and correlation to an existence of our experience, or
we had
do
a
we have the
corrupted
phenomenological
sentence.
experience of temporality?
I'm sorry.
Sorry?
I'm sorry. We had another corrupted sentence.
One where she was saying phenomenological.
It was on phenomenological time. It was probably like a half sentence ago.
It's like the first example that you gave when
Yeah, the first example you gave.
when you were expanding.
The Smolin?
Right after that.
Yes.
Okay, well, I basically I've got one of the questions I'm really interested in. I'll this. And hopefully this is what you missed, and I won't be repeating myself. But I'm looking to understand if we have the phenomenological experience of temporality that we do because of its proximity and correlation to an existence of time outside of our own experience, or do we have the phenomenological experience of temporality that we do because it was the most evolutionarily expedient form for it to take. So, for example, like if you can't see motion, like you're able to perceive motion, it's going to be very we're not going to evolve very far. So we needed to evolve a particular experience of time and temporality to just get to the point we're at now. So maybe, I don't know, maybe a little bit on that. I feel like there's so much crossover, and I would kind of like to just go take things up in questions, because I feel like there are a number of issues that can be addressed, either about time and future, or about xenofeminism particularly. But maybe it'd be best to leave some of that to the conversation.
Yes, indeed. I think I feel the same exact way. I'm marking down. But by all means, don't let me micromanage the panel later. I just wanted to prod one quick thing before we bring up Dr. Monteiro. Is I noticed something very similar to what Rasheedah said, that like when you, I guess, collect your literary strategy as a platform, that's this like pre-institutional formation, right? But it's the corruption process seems almost straightforward, almost like we know what to do, let's get to work. You know, and like I think the formation of the platforms is the stage we're in now. We just have to really like, you know, take over some of the more powerful institutions. Am I onto something with that? Don't take them over, just let them ride. 18 from Metro Polarity just said.
I'm actually not. I sort of feel like neither. You know, to take them over as they are would be just a shift in power, but to try and think about systemic change without, while trying to just disavow power, seems like it's not going to get very far. I was actually reading this article this morning. It's a very sort of straightforward. It doesn't really say anything that you probably don't already know if you're at all interested in the ideas of neoliberalism, but it's in The Guardian yesterday. And it's sort of basically about like the construction of neoliberalism. And, you know, it's started in the 30s as an idea, and it has become completely pervasive, so we don't even notice it. So it's become completely naturalized. And it's like, if that's a way to freaking construct a revolution, right? I mean, like, it takes a long time. But the other thing was actually, you look at it and they had huge amounts of support. The problem is that it was an ideology that is going to be very appealing to those that already have power, already have money, and want to sort of solidify that. So the difficult thing would be, how do you make something that's more egalitarian appealing to those that are going to be willing to throw money at it, and allow it to develop into something that can be pervasive and not marginal.
Awesome. Heard that. I think we'll follow some of that up. So all right, we have our last main presenter before the panel. I think I doubt Dr. Monteiro needs introduction here in Philadelphia, right? But I'm going to do it anyway. Dr. Monteiro is an activist and scholar in North Philadelphia. He researches and advances the Black radical tradition, a synthesis of social science, philosophy, art, and pedagogy for the invention of humanity at its best. He organizes with the Black Radical Organizing Collective, and the blog URL, should I say your blog URL? AfricanAmericanFutures.com.
Nice.
So, come on, Tony.
Thanks a lot, Quinn. And
Of course, thank
this
you.
has been a real great learning experience. I'm honored to be a part of it. And I just want to up David one. I think I'm the least qualified to be here. I don't have a PowerPoint. You know, for the sake of this discussion, I want to position myself as a future skeptic, a time agnostic, a pop culture pessimist. all in one, and maybe that makes me a curmudgeon. I guess I am the oldest person in the room. And, I kind of, on these matters of time and the future and so on, I'm highly influenced by Toni Morrison's novel Beloved, especially the character Sethe, who is neither of this time or of the future or of the past, but is ambiguously connected to all of that. The jazz ensemble called the Art Ensemble of Chicago used the phrase "back to the future," which problematizes and makes ambiguous all of this talk of time. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the founder of the Nation of Islam, had a theology of time. He had actually written a theology of time, which is kind of like Rasheedah's concept of dark holes. You might wish to explore that as a parallel set of arguments, especially from a person that is considered by mainstream theology to be a kook and everything else. But, and also the founder of the, Noble Drew Ali, the founder of the Moorish Science Temple, with the emphasis upon science. And Mike Watson studied with, and I probably still studies with people in the Moorish Science Temple, and their foundational interdisciplinary sciences are linguistics, etymology, geography, and what else? Astronomy and astrology. And they claim to be Moorish and Muslim in the same way that the Nation of Islam claims to be Muslim, but both are rejected by all mainstream Islamic and Christian theologies. Also, I'm influenced by the feminist literary critic Hortense Spillers, who in particular in an essay entitled Mama's Baby, Papa's Maybe, dislodges all projects of normality as relates to gender, patriarchy, etc. So I guess I'm in a kind of difficult position up here today, but let me say that all of this I wish to preface or set myself up as speaking from the standpoint of the struggle for black freedom, and not just the practical bodies on the ground, i.e. Black Lives Matter or the Black Liberation Movement or the Black Liberation Army or the Black Panther Party, but black liberation as an imaginary, as a way of organizing the now and the future and the past, which is always a big issue for black folk. Somehow that has gotten all tied up incorrectly and mistakenly with what has come to be called identity politics. I think the rational core in the confusion of that is what I just previously said. I would like to draw your attention also to two Philadelphia artists, Barbara Bullock and Ellen Powell Tipperino, both of whom painted images that were inspired by the MOVE organization, which is an imaginary, that is the MOVE organization, an imaginary so powerful that spiritually and physically they have not been able to be broken. I don't know how many of you have ever seen the work of Barbara Bullock, but I inherited some of her work from my brother's collection, and she imagines the black body of the, and I'm going to put quotes here, of the future now as a return to the past and an androgyny that is so powerful as to be frightening to many people. It is a feminism of sorts without calling itself that. And it would be worth sometime in the future inviting Barbara to come and speak about what she's doing. Maybe you can get her. I haven't been able in a long time to get, to sit down with her. But, so anyway, let me get to this. Du Bois in 1940, in an essay, in his book, Dusk of Dawn, referred to the African American people as a civilization in potentiality. This is as bold a conceptualization of a marginalized people who experienced for almost 400 years 24/7 shaming and demeaning, the dehumanization and destruction of the spirit, or attempt through this shaming process. And there's no black person who does not carry the scars of that. That shaming says you don't speak right. Therefore, and Rasheedah, you probably know this, in trying to get young black kids to speak, sometimes it's very difficult. Or older black people to speak because we've been shamed about the way we speak, shamed about everything about our beings. So for Du Bois to conceptualize a civilization in potentiality is to be a very powerful moment in the development of African American identity. It kind of is cross-fertilized with Sun Ra's notion of a civilization in potentiality. That's why when Quinn and I went to the screening of Space is the Place, which is one of the great movies in terms of metaphor and satire and irony, it is because he says, what is the problem that he came to address? He came from outer space to address. It is the problem, as he said, that the musical vibrations affecting black people were fucking them up. He didn't say it that way. I just can't think of a better word right now. And that he had to get the vibrations straight to allow this civilization in potentiality to realize itself. But what Du Bois is asserting is that the African American people are a civilization equal and on a par with other civilizations. He talks about this in a novel he wrote called The Dark Princess, which is about a fictional inter-civilizational group of people who are going to fight against the colonization of Africa and Asia. And this Dark Princess is probably a Brahmin from India who, among the other people from Cairo, Arabs and others, look down upon this black man from Chicago. How could they be a part of this grand liberatory process because they're not a civilization? So Du Bois counters that with a civilization in potentiality, a people who, in fact, as Du Bois and others, and certainly Sun Ra, and I'm certain John Coltrane, if he had been asked, have civilized white America. If there is a poverty of civilization, it is the civilization, or lack thereof, of the people who, and here we go with identity again, who identify as white to their detriment. That's throughout black thought. That is Sun Ra completely. you know, Mike can probably tell us better about that. But that's Sun Ra. That's Noble Drew Ali. That's the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's, frankly, Jimmy Baldwin. But what they were saying is this, that black people are a people for themselves, which dialectically makes them a people for humanity. A people for ourselves, determining ourselves and thus contributing to humanity's determination of itself, which means its liberation. That's different from a people in ourselves. Segregation and marginalization is designed, and the shaming process is designed to keep us a people in ourselves, cut off from humanity and from civilization. Now, there's a problem that we face, and I think Rasheedah mentioned it among other people. The whole problem of what we call cultural nationalism, Afrocentrism, etc. What is it predicated upon? What is its logic predicated upon? That we are people in ourselves. We are a people against all other people. We have nothing in common with other peoples. Afrocentrism denies this for ourselves and hence for humanity. Now, I'd just like to talk a little bit about Amiri Baraka and his notion of cultural revolution and class struggle. I just cringe sometimes when those who knew him back in the days only talk about him in the Black Arts movement, which was a very brief period in his long career. He goes from Greenwich Village and the Beat Poets, where he excels there, to the Black Arts movement after the assassination of Malcolm X, sets up, a number of institutions in Harlem, and then he moves to Newark, which he names New Art, and he becomes a cultural nationalist and a follower of Ron Karenga and the US organization. And he is there briefly, but then his more radical partner, Amina Baraka, on the foundation of a whole number of questions, including gender and sexuality, which reappears later because of their lesbian daughter, who the thinking of the cultural nationalists, homosexuality is a Western import into Africa. If you've never seen that discourse, that's something to see. It happened up at Temple. That's probably why I don't have a job. But she says to him in no uncertain terms, either you leave that bullshit behind or I'm out of here. And it probably parallel developments, because he and she ultimately reject cultural nationalism and what the organization they had formed called the Congress of African Peoples, and by 1974 formed the Revolutionary Communist League. So from 1974 to 2013 or 14, when he dies, he is in one or another way a revolutionary communist who sees the next stage, the next synthesis of black music in the avant-garde. And I want to get back to that word, the moments of synthesis in this 100-year period of black expressive music. But he sees this as a linchpin of cultural revolution, in some ways inspired, David, by the Chinese, Maoist cultural revolution, great proletarian cultural revolution, but he links it to the internal class conflict within the black community. In other words, against what Glenn Ford in the Black Agenda report, in which we all may as well look at this language, the black misleadership class. And I hope we got mixed company. The house Negro, the bootlicking class. You okay? So Baraka says that culture and class conflict go together. That there is no black music that is separate from the class conflict. There is no black music that is not a part of the struggle for power. There is no black music that is music for music's sake. And so the greatest jazz critic of ever is Amiri Baraka. And I recommend his work to you. But this idea where he looks back, he looks at music, he looks at, and he goes back like Sun Ra does to Fletcher Henderson and Duke Ellington. But that represented the 1920s, the Harlem Renaissance, a moment of synthesis of many things going on. Then you get bebop, modern jazz of the 1940s, Charlie Parker, Thelonious Monk, Dizzy Gillespie, Bud Powell, a whole number of others. A new synthesis. Then John Coltrane, another synthesis. And then this overarching, who I consider the greatest composer of the 20th century, Sun Ra. Sun Ra. A grand synthesis in music and in cosmology. And he joins them in a politics of black liberation. He didn't live in black Germantown just because he couldn't live nowhere else. They would have welcomed him with open arms in Japan and most of Europe, well, anywhere outside of this country. And maybe if he had sold out, he could have, but he was there because that's where he was supposed to be. That's where he had to be. He could not have produced this body of music, by the way, the largest discography in human history. We are still exploring it. He could not have done that anywhere else but where he was, which might begin to say something about how we have to research Black Philadelphia.
Yeah. He called it the Devil's Headquarters.
Is that what he called it? I never heard that, Rasheedah.
Come to Philadelphia,
The most terrible
to save
place
it,
on
it's
earth.
The Devil's Headquarters.
Oh, the Devil's Head. See, that's the Nation of Islam. And the headquarters being the founding. This is where the American mythos is organized and where it's celebrated. The symbology of Betsy Ross' house, which is a lie. Betsy Ross' house, figure that, man. Or the, yes, okay, that makes sense. I didn't know that part of it. But he produces unending, and even a rehearsal, he said that because the vibrations were going out, there was no such thing as playing lower. You're always playing at the top of your game. One second, I'll be finishing.
No, of course, I'm just
taking
taking
notes.
notes. I'm taking notes.
Let me just. So on this thing of time, I just want to come back to that. Like I said, I'm kind of an agnostic about it. The concept, of time. You get Kant in Western scientific mode. You get Kant, then you get its kind of reversal or transfiguration in Martin Heidegger, his notion of time. Because then they're looking at quantum physics and relativity theory and when Kant wrote, he was looking at mechanics and Newtonian physics. So you get these philosophical interrogations, but of course it's always from the positionality of Western bourgeois ideology. And it has all of the arrogance of this class of white Europeans who have now conquered or see their, here we go, future. They had to have a future, which makes it a suspect notion. Even if you put an afro on it, it's still suspect. It's carrying a lot of baggage. By the way, I don't consider Sun Ra an Afrofuturist. And I don't put Sun Ra and George Clinton together by any means. I mean, just because they wore outlandish costumes, different costumes, people put them together. I think there's something very different. And I think there's a difference between P-Funk and the mothership. I think it's a different cosmology. And there's nothing wrong with it, but just don't throw everything together for whatever. But I would like to propose the concept of revolutionary time, rather than time as the phenomenological time a la Heidegger, or time as something, the rationalist notion of time as Kant had it. We have to have time in order to think about phenomena. Or, for Heidegger, time is how we experience it. But revolutionary time, in the ways that I'm thinking about it, is connected to the cosmologies of, for instance, a Sun Ra. And if we study John Coltrane, especially the later train, where time, we think about time, different time formats.
Okay. This has to come out just because of how perfect it is. I really don't want to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Fareed and Shakur were talking to me at one point.
You should tell me who Fareed is.
Fareed Barron is a Philadelphia piano player who is probably the closest thing to Sun Ra that we have.
Well, at least he has that chair.
Yeah, he took this chair when he was like that.
At least he has that chair. You should see Mike.
Yeah, I saw it.
It's not the, well, go ahead.
Is there an anti-Fareed sentiment?
Not the big.
Go ahead.
And we were talking about time and pulse and rhythm at one point, and we were all sitting around, and I forget, I think it was Shakur was talking about, everyone talks about playing in time. Like, you gotta play in time. And it's like, wait a second. Time's moving, and and not unidirectionally, it's, thinking like it's in constant motion and flux all the time. If you're trying to play in time, you're trying to catch up with something. You're trying to split yourself in all these directions. It's like literally like there's no, you're playing a losing game. You have to be, and we don't mean this in a way of like hierarchically above, but you have to be above time. So that, but just perspective-wise, so you can see all of it at once and be able to be at whatever place.
See, I think,
and he, of course, they said it much better than I could.
No, that's okay. See, I think with Sun Ra, who was a profound thinker, what he leaves us with is a way to interrogate time, interrogate, investigate, that is not grounded in European, not to quote, science or rationalism. That's why I'm very interested in what Diann and her colleagues are doing. Because I think what she's saying is rather than a nihilism, an interrogation. And it's a different methodology. Nihilism, you reject everything. That's the ground of identity, or politics, or cultural nationalism. We're going to have a whole new thing. But what?
Diann is right here, man.
Oh, hi, Diann.
You can stop right there.
Yeah. But I'm going to end in just a second. Just give me 1 second. So, I think we in the Black Radical Organizing Collective put on a conference on the Black Radical tradition. We put on something that we didn't know what we were putting on. Because, you know, a lot of people say if you're doing something black, it has to be all black. But then here we have this organizing committee which organically grows out of the moment of struggle, where you have mainly African Americans, but Egyptians, Palestinians, South Asians, including Indian and Pakistanis, Hindu and Muslims, organized around the principle of the centrality and non-equivalence of the black liberation struggle to the emancipation of the, and I'll put quotes here, the American nation, and centered or anchored in North Philadelphia. Some people say, well, and the measure or the conceptual approach is, well, if it's black, it must be all black, i.e., a people in ourselves that are fighting against all other people. That's where you get the homophobia from in Afrocentrism. Because if anything is going on in Europe, if we're Afrocentric, we must be the opposite, knee-jerk. You see what I'm saying? But then they make the other argument, everything in Europe came from Africa. So if the Europeans have homosexuality, it must have come from Africa, which obviously it did. But my point is this, that inter-civilizational unity from below. And we can explore, we can talk about that a lot more.
Could you say that once more?
Inter-civilizational unity from below.
Thank you.
I get this from Paul Robeson, his practice, and from a concept that Huey P. Newton put out in the early 1970s, intercommunalism. But I think what we're seeing in the throes of what is one of the great human diasporas of human history, that is the great movement of peoples all over the planet, and including in a nation like this. And are we to say that the South Asian is a brown woman, and this is a white man, and I'm a black woman? You know, do those categories, although important, do they explain the modalities of the organization of revolutionary struggle rather than the obstacles to the organization of revolutionary struggle? These are categories we have to acknowledge and address. There is no way to get around the overarching excuse me, Diann, I'm going to shut up right now. The overarching presence of white supremacy in the organization of capitalism, be it in its neoliberal form or previous forms. You cannot get around. But the organizing principles for the organization of capitalism cannot be the organizing principles for the organization of the struggle against capitalism. So when we looked at our practice, when we looked at who we were, we said this is an inter-civilizational unity. I look at Meghna Chandra, I don't just see a brown woman. This is a woman from a civilization. She has value. Whatever their cultural, sexual, whatever practices, they have to be acknowledged and respected in this dynamic of inter-civilizational unity. The way we look at what is called the future, I see it through John Coltrane's son, Ron James Baldwin. Jimmy Baldwin gives us a way to philosophically think about this reality, this cosmology of time where the future is not something in the future, but the future is something in the now and in the past. And I agree, I agree with you so much about dark holes and inverting the dark holes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.